Moving on to item number 9, update and progress of EHT subdivision ordinance. And I'll defer to Kyle. Oh, you have a comment?
Yes, I did on the agenda.
Yes, ma'am, you did.
I'd like to read my statement regarding this item because I requested it be put on the agenda because I feel it's a very important thing with the growth that's coming to Glen Rose and then the ETJs. In December, I casually mentioned about where these subdivision ordinances stood if they've been looked at. In March meeting, when the city administrator was giving the public works report in absence of the public works manager, I asked if any progress was made on reviewing and suggestions for revision. The city administrator replied that he did not have time to work on them. I asked if it would be possible to have them for the April meeting with notations and recommendations. It was not on the April agenda, so I asked the reasons why, and if the code enforcement officer, the public works manager had reviewed these ordinances or been involved in any way. The city administrator responded that the code enforcement officer was involved in the process. Since I had not heard anything, I filled out an agenda request, and based on the city administrator's cover sheet that was given, that stated that it was given to Ken West, and it was given to our past city administrator on June 6, 2013. Ken West resigned the next month, so the information was then given to our present city administrator, and I could not find the exact date, but my understanding of my notes was at the end of December or beginning of January, right after he came. And knowing that he had to get the lay of the land and so forth before that was something for him to deal with. The statement within his cover sheet that he didn't realize it was an issue, and the recommendation to turn it to a planning and zoning commission, which is a volunteer commission, not members who have knowledge of paid, like the paid staff, that work with these issues on a continual basis. It does not follow the letter that was made by recommendation of EHT, which states, it was made to Ken, and it stated that we have attached 2 copies of the draft subdivision ordinance for the city's review. After you and your staff have had a chance to review it, let's meet and discuss any revisions or comments you and your staff may have. It says staff, and my personal feeling is, and I'm asking these questions in general, to me, the questions that only a paid staff and experienced person that works with this day to day, which would include the zoning administrator, which is you, to answer these questions. And one is the responsibility of all personnel that are involved in subdivision ordinances, and the example of those, the zoning administrator, which again is you, the code enforcement officer, the fire marshal, the public works manager, as well as engineers and the city attorney for the legal standpoint. I don't see where planning and zoning can answer those questions. And whether we have checked the proposed subdivision ordinances against the city's comprehension plan, how do they match up? I'm not sure that P&Z could begin to even answer those. They are volunteers. And how many of these new ordinances, I've just flipped through and read and highlighted several, conflict with our present ones. And I just feel very strongly that this is not something for volunteer proof to have to go through our ordinances or the comprehensive plan to make these recommendations. And going through here, I don't see any notes or highlights or comments where these have been looked at by the staff or the fire marshal.
We have not gotten together on these. In fact, that was part of, and let me back up to my recommendation for the Planning and Zoning Commission. This is one of the most important ordinances that the city has because it is the development of the future. In the other cities where we have gone through and redone the subdivision ordinance while I was there, we've always used planning and zoning. And maybe it was a different group of people in Somervell Fire Department in particular. There were a couple of attorneys that were part of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And they spent quite a few months going through every word, every phrase, the entire subdivision ordinance to make sure it was something that they could recommend to the council. And it gives, basically another set of eyes with the ownership of the community, which is the Planning and Zoning Commission. They have a view of the community, that they have some ownership in the future of the community because they are on planning and zoning. If that's not what the council wants to do, and they want to run it just directly through our office, I will be pleased to do it that way.
My feeling is that before they're given to us or the planning and zoning, the reason that I feel they're important is EHT went to the time to do it, and it suggests staff. The code enforcement officer his responsibility is to carry out the ordinance of the city, so he is responsible. The fire marshal has to be involved with the builder or the contractor in all of those areas. The public works manager knows about the streets, the curbing, the guttering, whether we have ditches or not, and the ordinance is in here is in conflict with our ordinance regarding that. I just don't think that you can just throw something to the P&Z without some type of markings, recommendations from the staff who understands how that's dealt with. And we have enough trouble in Glen Rose. We're Glen Rose, Texas. We're not Chaminade Park or any other area. And we have enough trouble getting people to volunteer. And on the planning and the P&Z board right now, the only person that would have knowledge of this is Anthony Ruffino. And Anthony Ruffino is very busy building houses. And for him to take the hours that I know that it takes to compare all of this, he's not being paid for that. He's giving his services, and when they make their decision, the P&Z makes their decision, they're making it based on the recommendations, the information that is given them by either you as a zoning administrator or the code enforcement office.
If you would like us to do it in-house first, we will do that without any question. Do you want at that point to let the planning and zoning see it before it comes to the council? Or do you see a reason for planning and zoning to be involved at all at this point?
My personal opinion is, I don't see any of the, because of the fact that they are volunteers, I don't see any reason for them to be really involved actively, to be all doing all of this. Unless the code enforcement and yourself being the head of the P&Z feel like they need to have input, but it needs to come from people with experience and knowledge and expertise first. Now that, the rest, I'm just speaking for me, I'm not speaking for the rest of the council, please.
Comments from other council members? Councilman Bryant.
No, I do agree with what the Councilwoman said, because reading this, I assumed that we already finalized, we already been through it, and now we're going to give it to P&Z to look at and be familiar with it more or less. But yeah, I agree. That's we have such a hard time getting volunteers here, and I hate to just overload them with abundance of work that would ultimately just have to come back to us for changes and approvals anyway. So I would like to see the city take control of this and finalize it, and then hand it over to the P&Z for review.
Councilman Clark.
Yeah, I don't think it's P&Z's responsibility to come up with ordinances. I believe it's a responsibility to make sure all the decisions are based on the existing ordinance.
Councilman Joe.
Sure, I think there are people on P&Z that, such as Mr. Rufino, that might be able to pick out something that's blatantly wrong or erroneous in the formation of it, and give them an opportunity to at least review it at their leisure. Say, hey, we've got this document ready, go ahead and sign off on it, or look over it at your convenience. It doesn't have to be a formal P&Z board meeting. If somebody that has a clue, doesn't have a clue about it, then they don't agree.
I'm sure EHT would be helping us also tweak it, right?
Sure on that.
Yeah, I agree. Ray, Jim, yourself, the attorney, all be involved, the EHT. Any other comments? This was a discussion item, I believe.
It will be moved to the commonly called front burner. We'll do that.
Thank you.
We hope to have this ready for approval by the June 8th, possibly the June 8th.
Is that a feasibility for June 8th, or just?
I'm just asking.
I'm not sure that it is. We will set that as a goal, but depending on if we can get everybody together and nothing happens, you know, that would take our attention away from it, and we will shoot for that.
Okay. Any other comments from council? Okay, moving on.